And I'm the half-ass of the two old farts.
Why are you half-assed today?
Hell, I don't know. I just thought I felt like saying half-ass.
Well, you don't have your flipper in. What's going on with that?
It's just a pain in the ass putting it in and taking it out. Sometimes I feel like I'm pulling all my damn teeth out. So I'll wear it when I have to, and if I don't have to, I don't wear it.
I'm going to tell you like a parent tells a child. They give it to you for a reason, and it's not just cosmetic for the vanity. It is also serving a purpose of shaping your gum line. So when they put the implant in there, the gums will be automatically shaped to go around the tooth.
What's that saying? Do what I tell you to do, not as I do.
Uh, you know what the parent would tell the child? How you like this size 10.5 up your ass?
Yeah, something like that. But anyway,
And ladies and gentlemen, this is the definition of irony. This man right here and his brothers used to complain about how stubborn their mother was. All the while, never taking the mirror and sticking it up to their face.
well, if I did that, I'd probably break the damn mirror.
Well, you would also see that you're stubborn too, just as stubborn as she is.
Well, I guess it runs in the family, huh?
I guess it does.
Because I can say it trickled down a little bit to the son and to the
Well,
daughter
well,
and to,
yeah.
and to some of those granddaughters.
Stubborn, hard-headed, thick-headed.
But
But I also in some ways I take after your two brothers, and probably more so in some areas than you.
yeah, that's true. Well, you were your Uncle Gene's favorite. Of course, he would never say that, but
No, but and it's really strange how much closer we got as I got older.
well, you guys had a lot of things in common, and he enjoyed his time with you. He could talk to you because he didn't have it. He had three daughters, and that doesn't mean anything about he didn't love his three daughters or anything like that. It just it just do some crazy stuff like trying to dig that post hole that time.
I will never get over that. That is probably the funniest story of my life.
I'm gonna tell you that's what makes the memories. A lot of time I'll see stuff on Facebook with friends and stuff, and they're doing with their families and stuff like that. That's what making memories all about down the road. Because I'm gonna tell you, that's one of my favorite memories. I'll never ever forget that day. I don't care what happens. I'll always remember that day. You busting your ass trying to dig a post hole, and it probably went that deep, if that much.
If that deep.
But that was sure was fun. We drank a little beer, and that was probably the last time we had a chance to drink a little beer with your Uncle Gene.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, so and then
Well, let's get on with it, old fart.
then some of this stuff we're gonna talk about a little bit later about Trisha Yearwood and the comments she made and made me think about your Uncle Ray.
Okay.
Yeah. Anyway, I got some stuff about history on this day. I know you do too. In 1862, the Battle of Pueblo took place, where Mexican forces defeated the French at Pueblo. The victors celebrated Cinco de Mayo, which is what Cinco de Mayo. Cinco de Mayo is what, tomorrow?
Tomorrow.
Yeah. Then in 1904, the United States began construction of the Panama Canal. Then Al Capone in 1932 was convicted, jail for tax evasion. In the first Grammy Awards in 1959. In the first Freedom Ride, 1961. In 1970, 4 students at Kent State was killed during the anti-war protests. I know you got something on that.
Yes.
And one of my favorite football coaches from Kent State.
That would be Nick Saban.
That'd be Nick Saban. Then Margaret Thatcher in 1979 became Britain's first female prime minister. And this one is what shocks me. And I really just don't understand it. And it doesn't shock me, but I just don't understand why we're where we're at now. In 1994, Rabin and Arafat signed a peace agreement. and we did all of that, and there was a lot went into that process. Then you see where we're at today, and I just don't understand that. Of course, in 2005, Eric Rudolph agreed to plead guilty in the Olympic Park bombing. So, what you got?
So to expand on the Kent State shooting, so this happened on May the 4th. I'm gonna throw in a little Star Wars. May the 4th be with you. So on May 4th, 1970, the Ohio National Guard opened fire on students at Kent State University during a protest against the U.S. invasion of Cambodia, which was an escalation of the war in Vietnam. And the outcome of that was 4 students were killed and 9 were wounded. And back to what you were saying about our favorite coach, he was there at Kent State when that happened. He wasn't there at the protest, but he was a member of the university. I can't remember if he was a grad assistant or a player at that time, but he was enrolled at Kent State at that time. So the story within the story. So it wasn't just about Vietnam. They were protesting Nixon's April 30th announcement that U.S. troops were entering Cambodia, and a move that had contradicted his promises to scale down the war. But underneath the protest, there was a broader youth movement that was clashing with what it saw as, the establishment trying to, keep them down, repress the youth, if you will.
Right.
And it was because of that the campuses in America had become a battleground, very much like today. There are protests going on, different groups protesting different people. Don't want to get into that at this time. So the National Guard, they weren't supposed to have live ammunition, and many believed that they were only carrying their rifles to show or for intimidation. But they were armed with live ammunition, and they were using M1 Garand rifles. And after just 13 seconds of gunfire, 67 rounds were fired, and some students were shot over 300 feet away, which were nowhere near the protests. So 2 of the students that were killed weren't even protesting. That was Sandra Schuer and William Schroeder. They were just walking to class. And their deaths kind of underscored the randomness and the horror of what had happened. And then, you have the photos that it just shocked the nation, shocked the conscience of the nation. A 14-year-old girl, Marianne Vecchio, screaming over the dead body of Jeffrey Miller was an iconic photo. And the backlash was not as bad as you would have thought. Instead of universal sympathy, many Americans blamed the students, not the Guard. The governor of Ohio called the protesters the worst type of people. Public opinion, obviously, though, was deeply divided, and Nixon's own tapes revealed him calling the campus protesters bums. So here's the twist. The government, it held multiple investigations, and there were multiple lawsuits, but nobody was ever held criminally liable or responsible. But the U.S. government did settle a lawsuit in 1979 and paid the victim's family $675,000 without ever admitting wrong. And the shootings became a symbol of the government's willingness to turn its guns inward, which sparked nationwide student protests and strikes, closing hundreds of campuses, and it forever changed how the American people viewed both protests and authority. And so out of that also, there were 900 colleges and universities that were closed over several days. Over 4 million students went on strike, some for the remainder of the semester. The largest student strike in the history of the United States. But it also signals a deep generational divide and national outrage. And so it was also a turning point in the Vietnam War on its opinion. The country was always divided against the war, but the shootings of American citizens shocked the rest of the country and questioned how far the willingness of the government it would go to suppress dissent, or and the events eroded support for the war, particularly among the middle class who had been sitting on the fence. And it just further intensified the distrust of the Nixon administration. But culturally, also, out of that came a very popular song by Crosby, Stills, Nash, and Young, which was written by Neil Young, and it's called Ohio. And the beginning of the song starts off with these lyrics: "Hen soldiers and Nixon's coming, we're finally on our own. 4 dead in Ohio." So, and because it was kind of a protest song, many stations on AM radio had banned the song because it was viewed as a resistance song, if you will.
So what kind of correlation do you see in the age group of those students in 1970 with what's taking place right now?
It's exactly the same, but for different reasons. So what's going on today has nothing to do with America so much as it has to do with Israel and Palestine, and how those two entities view each other and the land, if you will, and which goes back thousands and thousands of years. So it's a much deeper rooted issue, which is much different than the Vietnam War, which was a kind of a coming of age, if you will, with your generation, the youth movement, which saw tremendous change. No other cultural touchstone or touch point in history had the level of change in this country from your generation. Even those a little bit older, as well as those a little bit younger, because it was the little folks a little older than you that had brought on and ushered in the age of rock and roll, which was extremely controversial. The dancing, the moves, Elvis, that one video that they shot of him at a concert, they wouldn't show him from the waist down.
Right.
Because it was so suggestive. And then you have the Beatles, the Rolling Stones, and then the Vietnam War, to where up until that point, it was viewed as patriotic to go, but yet a lot of the youth didn't understand why, because it seemed like it was a civil war going on in that country, and everybody here was like, why should we get involved in their problems? And that just kind of escalated and festered until, and then the politicians, they took sides. It was the whole communism thing, the domino theory, that if this country falls to communism, then this country and this country and this country. So it's kind of an us against them, which ushered in the Cold War, where we were at war with Russia and communism, but it wasn't a hot war where bullets were fired. It was a Cold War because it was a standoff and diplomatic and spying on each other, that type of thing. So, yeah, there's just a lot of stuff. And guess what? Out of that, just 2 weeks later, on May 15th, there was another shooting at Jackson State in Mississippi. Actually, it was 10 days later. So 10 days after the Kent State shootings, police opened fire on students at Jackson State College, which is a historically black college in Mississippi. The students were protesting racism and police violence amid the growing tension from the Vietnam War and the civil rights struggle. And 2 young men were killed and 12 others were wounded. So what had happened was, shortly after midnight, the city and state police fired over 150 rounds into a woman's dormitory, claiming they were responding to sniper fire, yet no evidence was ever found of a sniper. And Philip Lafayette Gibbs, 21, stood student at Jackson State, and James Earl Green, 17, was a local high school student. So out of that, again, no accountability. Despite a federal commission, it deemed the response unjustifiable and clearly unwarranted, even though it was unjustified and clearly unwarranted. No police officers were charged. And the saddest part is that this shooting did not garner the widespread national attention, which again highlights the racial disparities in media reporting, which is something we are still dealing with today. You look at kidnappings, people missing or whatever. It's all of the media is generally fixed to white women and white children compared to black women and black children who are either kidnapped or murdered or whatever.
And see, and that's the correlation. I think when you look at the people of that time and the age group of that time, I can see a lot of that thought process today.
Yeah.
And it's some things never change and everything changes, right?
More things change, the more they stay the same.
Exactly. And that's the correlation that I see. I see back then that group, that age group, and I'm not criticizing any of this. I'm just saying from my point of view. And so then it makes me think, well, what are we going to see next? Because you're talking about probably a 10-year age span, maybe 15-year age span in that group. Then you start seeing changes, and then next thing you know, you got another age group coming up that feels different, that sees things differently, and then you spark all of these different issues and stuff like that.
It also goes to prove it's been 55 years since that Kent State shooting, and ain't nothing changed.
Nothing has changed.
The Jackson State shooting, nothing has changed.
No.
There's a trial going on right now in, is it Memphis, where those 3 police officers are charged with the death of 3 black police officers who were fired, of black motors who they pulled over, and there's a video of them just beating and kicking the shit out of this guy.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and then you only got to go back 30 years to 35 years to Rodney King. Those obviously were white officers, but these are black officers. But still, nothing has changed in this regard. And hell, there's cameras now, cameras everywhere.
And to me, that goes back to what I was saying about the culture of people in a particular age group and how they see and how things change in your beliefs and how you see life and how you decide to carry forward how you plan to do things. It's generational. I don't know how to change that.
We just got to keep trying, I guess.
Yeah. You go back to my age group, and then what we come out of World War II, you saw changes. Then you get into the rock and roll area, how those changes, So, yeah, it's just something I don't think we're thinking enough about.
It also goes back, and I see myself mirroring the same behavior that you exhibited towards me when I was in high school. The long hair, the long dangly rock and roll earring, and how you felt about it. And then today, I see young men with obviously they have long hair, but they have it up in a man bun or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'm like, you know what? If I criticize that person for how they're having their hair, it's no different than my dad criticizing me and how I had my hair.
But unfortunately, we don't stop and think about it like that. It's easier to criticize than it is to stop and think. I was talking to someone this morning, and we're really kind of talking about the same thing we're talking about now. Until you walk a mile in somebody else's shoes, you don't really understand. We were talking about PTSD. Your mom and I watched a World War One movie last night uh, on the the front battlefront, World War One, and you look at everything they went through, the trench warfare, the gas, and all those, and you see how they reacted. But then you don't. You look at today's society when in the military, the PTSD aspect of it, and the mental aspects of people with a lot of different diseases and stuff like that. We want to criticize rather than trying to understand the behavior and what causes it, and trying to, and that it's kind of going to lead it to another talk here in a few minutes. Where we talk about Trisha Yearwood and some of her new songs she's going to talk about. Uh, we, there's a lot to be said about walking up a mile in somebody else's shoes.
Absolutely. Because we all process things differently, and stress and whatever.
And that's why when you listen, you need to listen to both sides. Then you can draw on your personal feelings and your own personal beliefs and make a decision. And hopefully, no one has a right decision. No one has a perfect decision, because it's all about interpretation.
Or what's the most right at that point in time.
Right. Change subject a little bit. Cinco de Mayo. Do you know that Cinco de Mayo is not very big in Mexico?
Does it matter?
No, it's primarily celebrated in Pueblo, where the battle took place. But for the rest of Mexico, it's not a national holiday.
But it is a national holiday here because we like to drink our margaritas and eat our Mexican food.
Absolutely. And what president actually kind of got that started?
Cinco de Mayo?
Not Cinco de Mayo, but about all the aspects around it, the partying and making it bigger and stuff like that.
Teddy Roosevelt.
Roosevelt, you're right. So, it's all about money and stuff like that. And Mexicans don't call it Cinco de Mayo. I'm not even going to try to say the Spanish words, but it translates the day of the Battle of Pueblo in English.
Dia de Pueblo?
Hell, I can't even speak English, so I don't try to say something in Spanish. And kids may filth off from school in Mexico. That is, it's not a federal holiday, but kids get school off. So another fun fact. What are some of the cool facts about the Kentucky Derby? Had the 151st run in yesterday.
Sovereignty beat journalism?
Yeah, but the fastest Kentucky Derby was run by Secretariat in 1973, 1.59.40 seconds. Do you know that Secretariat was
right.
linked to every single horse that ran in yesterday's Kentucky Derby?
Off that bloodline?
Off that bloodline, yeah. That is
wow.
That's something else, isn't it? Yeah.
It is.
So one Kentucky Derby position has never seen a winner. What position is that?
First.
Nope. Number 17. Never has had a winner. Of all the other positions have all had winners, but number 17 hadn't. I thought it was kind of funny. Pretty neat. Did you watch it yesterday?
I didn't. I knew it was on, but there was this other stuff going on, and I did not watch it.
No particular reason. I just had it on, so I was watching it. But that horse that won, it came from like 5th to 6th place to pull it off. And the field was sloppy on. It was really muddy.
It was really muddy. Yeah, I seen the pictures.
Yeah, but it was a pretty good race.
Hey, who did you say that? Hang on, let me go back to the Cinco de Mayo real quick. Who did the Mexican army defeat at the Battle of Puebla?
Oh, hell, I don't remember. I'll go back to my notes.
It was the French.
The French, yes. I was going to say that, but I want to make sure.
Seems like the French always get their ass kicked by everybody in war, don't it?
Well, World War One, they come out pretty good because we went over and helped them.
Exactly. Yeah, you know what they say about the French in World War II? They got a bunch of rifles for sale, never been fired and only dropped once.
Yeah. So anyway, we had a good time with Trisha Yearwood the other night. What was that saying that she said that you sent me?
I sent you something.
Yeah.
Oh, hang on. Let me look. Hang on. Let me look. I sent you some pictures. Oh yeah. One of her songs. She was talking about, and it was with one of those two young ladies that are in the picture. Summer Dean and
Erin.
And Erin, I can't remember her last name, but one of the topics and subjects of the song is, are you an obstacle or do you lift someone up?
Yep.
And it had to do with her at her age, because she's just a little bit older than me and my wife. And so much of what she was saying was resonating with me and my wife personally, because we're just at that age and we're just at the, I don't give a shit no more about this or that. People can say or do what they want. I don't care. It's not going to bother me. But it was also about, she was looking about it at her status and success and wanting to help those who are younger than her get to that same point. Because if we're not trying to lift each other up, are you being an obstacle?
Yeah.
So that was
a big fan.
That was something very profound that I took away from her concert.
Same way here, and because of that, I'm going to buy this new album she's got coming out. I'm not necessarily a big fan where I like to listen to. Usually, I like something a little bit more, rock and roll type, a little faster beat type thing. But it resonated with me too. I didn't hear, of course, with my hearing loss and everything she said, but I did some research on some stuff, what she was saying and stuff like that. First off, what's an obstacle in your life?
For me, my age.
Okay.
Another obstacle, trying to get promoted.
Okay. Some of the things we've just been talking about: habits, behaviors, beliefs that hold us back from being who we want to be. And I think that kind of goes back to what we were talking about earlier, but Kent State and some of those beliefs and how those things in life transition and stuff like that. Most common ones are avoidance, having negative habits, or attracting negative people.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that.
And I think that goes back to what you're saying when we're looking at this Kent State deal and those other kind of things. Avoidance, because we don't want to deal with what the reality is right now, right? Then having negative habits or attracting negative people around those things, and they just escalate those issues to where they get out of hand. Instead of having conversations over something that we need to resolve, we don't. Next thing you know, we have those obstacles.
But I would also say, and it's today's lingo, culture, whatever, it's definitely the if you fuck around, you're going to find out kind of a situation. And when protests get violent, you should expect a violent response back. Now, I'm not saying that the Kent State thing was a violent protest. Not saying that at all, but I'm just saying in general, if you're going to protest, expect the level of response back that you give. You give hostility, you should expect to receive hostility.
Yeah.
Because the right to protest is guaranteed by the Constitution, but it doesn't say the right to protest in any way you want. You can't go into a movie theater and yell fire. There are limits.
Exactly. What are you negatively attracted to?
What am I negatively attracted to?
Mm-hmm.
For me, being right and not wanting to let that go.
Right.
To prove my point.
Perfectionism.
I wouldn't
blame.
call it perfectionism. It's just, I don't know. It's some kind of psychological inadequacy or something about having to prove myself right in an argument if
Yeah.
somebody takes a contrary point. But that's
Okay.
just me.
Then talk about Trisha Yearwood. What does it mean to lift someone up? Her song, The Wall or the Way Over, including the phrase, do you lift someone up when she's looking at all the things you're told? It's exploring how words can either help or hinder someone. These songs sets to be featured on her new songwriter album, delivers in the themes of resilience and the impact of language. I think that's so true.
Yeah, her all of the songs, they all had a common theme that I kind of took away, and it was all coming from her point of view. And it was about, like, I'm not going to give a shit, about what people say or do. I'm going to do what I need to do, but at the same time, I also am going to recognize all those around me who help make me better, and I'm going to take them with me and make them better as well.
And that's one of the things I really enjoyed. I liked about her concert. A lot of people go to a concert because they want to hear all the songs that made that person popular, but she didn't necessarily, I don't think, did that. I think she sang songs that she wanted to sing, and I think the audience really resonated with that. And you can see that when she had Sonny Sweeney and Erin, the girl named Erin, I can remember, and how much love she had for those two, and how much she allowed them to be part of her show.
Even one of the backup singers that was off to the side who played guitar as well, she co-wrote a song with Trisha Yearwood, and she called her out and brought her up forward. So she was definitely all about sharing all of the love and in helping and highlighting these young women with these great talents.
And if you think about it, if you're going to create a message or send a message, you need to back it up.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's what she did. How she conducted or performed, at that concert. I think it was lends credence to what her beliefs and what the message she wanted to get out. She is like put up or shut up.
I agree.
Yeah.
And one last thing I want to talk about before we wrap this up, because we're already past 30 minutes, is this past week, April 30th was the 50th anniversary of the fall of Saigon in Vietnam. The last of the Americans pulled out. But just a few weeks before that, ladies and gentlemen, there was another thing that was going on in Vietnam, and it was called Operation Baby Lift, and it was at the early parts of April. And this guy right here, this old fart with missing the snaggle tooth, he was a part of that, and on very short notice. I don't know much, but I do remember we were living in Japan, and one day my dad's home, and the next day he was gone for a couple of days. Didn't know, and it wasn't until a few days after he was gone that my mom was able to tell me, that he went to Vietnam. I'm like, didn't he already go? And she's like, yeah, but he had to go back, and he went down there on a C-141. You said
141.
and you did 2 trips into Vietnam to evacuate all of the Vietnamese families that were part of helping the U.S. military that were there, the wives, the children, the husbands that we were interpreters or whatever.
It was an interesting trip. We flew into Vietnam, then from Vietnam into Philippines, and back into Vietnam, and another trip into the Philippines to drop off stuff like that. But it was just something that we just did. That's what we asked to do when first got notice. They said we're looking for people with a top secret clearance. And I don't remember my friend's name who went with me that we worked with in Vietnam. But you know what? The funny part of that was the pilots on that 141 were actually airline pilots. They were National Guards, right? And they were called up for that particular mission and stuff like that. And for them, they were having fun. We went in at a height, all of a sudden we just dropped down. We landed. And as we're taxiing down that little runway, the back of that airplane was dropping down. And, we jumped out. My buddy was in the front and I was in the back. We loaded and we were gone again. But
it wasn't just a milk run there, ladies and gentlemen. One of the flights that did go down, and it wasn't on a C-141, it was on a C-5 Galaxy. When they landed on April 4th, they loaded about 250 small children along with a staff of volunteers and nurses. And about 12 minutes after takeoff, the locks on the rear cargo door failed, and the aft air pressure door, part of the loading ramp, and the cargo door, it blew off, and it severely damaged the flight controls in the tail. And the pilots attempted to make an emergency landing over Tan Son Nhut Air Base, but the plane crashed in a marsh about 2 miles past the runway. No, short of the runway, and 138 people were killed, and including 78 children. So it wasn't just a turn and burn as you make it sound, old man. It was quite a dangerous thing.
Yes, it was. A lot of people got saved. That a lot of kids.
Yeah, and a lot of people lost their lives too to try to save those children. So
Yeah.
You're a hero.
Well, I don't know about that, but that's what we do in the military, right?
Yeah.
We serve and we do things so that people have the rights to do the things they want to do.
That's so true.
You
So
know,
on that, we're going to cut this thing short before we get all teary-eyed and sad and sappy.
Say one more thing. Your grandfather's birthday was yesterday. Bob Charbonneau. I posted a picture of him in Vietnam in 1966, celebrating his birthday.
I remember that.
Your Uncle Ray was there. Your Uncle Gene was there. Uncle Leonard. We all did Apple Hearts.
Yep. They all weren't there for the party. They were all there in Vietnam at different points in time.
Yeah. Yeah, and the world is very small.
It is.
My supervisor, who I worked military working dog with, knew my father-in-law. I knew of him at the end of World War II, Navy beach jumpers. And that's how he would let me save up my time, go spend a few days with him from different time and stuff like that. But that's another story. So,
All right, everybody. We're going to wrap this thing up.
Yeah, we're at 38 minutes now. I'll be getting a call from your Aunt Carolyn.
All right. Y'all take care, everybody.
Love you.
Love you too, Dad. Love you guys.